Greetings, valued viewer. Today we're doing a tier list. If you are a producer, you're starting your career, perhaps you're in the middle of your career, perhaps you have stumbled into some money, perhaps one of your relatives died, I'm so sorry, and you just came into a fortune. What is the most important thing for you to spend your money on? How is that going to translate to you and success for you and your clients? Let's find out together. Let's talk about it. All right, let's kick this shit off. What do you say? Starting right off, we are going to go big. Microphones. Like this microphone. I even chose this microphone to be our icon, but really, this applies to anything, any microphone. For a producer, your vocal mic is like, I don't want to say it's one of the most important things, but it's S tier. It's S tier. It's one of the most important things. I lied to you. Okay. Why is it S tier? Because no one gives a shit about you, valued viewer, if you're a producer, that is. You're not important here. What's important is the artist. The artist. How do they sound? How are you making them sound? There's a caveat to the microphone. There's a caveat, I will say. There is a point of diminishing returns. By that, I mean, X amount of money invested into a microphone, the jumps in quality in their price range diminish over time. Do you need to invest in a $4,000 vintage tube microphone, a $10,000 vintage tube microphone? No, you don't. Is your, $200 AKG, whatever, a good idea for the long term? Probably not. Probably not. Because the main theme of today is everything matters. You always see discussions online on Reddit. Oh, what's the most important thing? Does this matter? Does this matter? Everything matters, dude. Even if it's only 5% of the equation out of that 100% pie, it still matters. Now, for me, a microphone is far more than 5% of it. And I put the SM7 here because it's just a microphone that's been a favorite of mine for a very long time. And as we will talk about when we get to acoustic treatment and so on and so forth, room treatment, an SM7 is a microphone that you can get away with a little bit more in terms of not having a great sounding room. So that's why I chose that icon. But this really does apply to any microphone. In terms of a budgeting logic, it's difficult to say. If you're working with paid clients and that money is maybe it's a side hustle, put some of it aside and find a microphone that's reasonable for your genre, for your budget, for the style of vocalists do you work with? Do you work with belters? Do you work with delicate vocalists? Do you work with men? Do you work with women? Everybody in between? Okay, well, now we got to talk about other options, which we're not going to do here. But microphone is done, so S tier, super important for me. Now, producer, not mixer, monitors. Where do monitors stand? Do you need to buy really expensive ATCs? Can you get away with your Yamahas? I'm putting them in B tier. It's controversial. It's controversial. I know it's controversial. Especially because most producers now are expected to mix their own production. So you're like, what are you talking about? Monitors are one of the most important things. Of course they are. However, there's something that's more important than monitors, and we'll get to it eventually. For a producer, if you're in a situation where you are mixing your own stuff, maybe this goes into A. If you're a producer with budget, maybe you're hiring a mixer, maybe it goes into B. If you're a producer who does a lot of in-room collaboration, maybe it goes back into A. If you're a producer who doesn't, if you work mostly online, maybe it stays in B. Monitors, again, great monitors will change your life, but if you're early in your career, just getting something that you know how it sounds is important. Getting something that's exciting to listen to in the room with you and the clients is important. You don't need to be making mixer-level sonic decisions that early on. Excitement is key. So for me, for the average producer, I'm going B. If you're trying to level up your shit, everything becomes S tier, but then it would go to A. Here we have a Neve 1073, which is a preamp. How important is a preamp, a microphone preamp, to a producer? Well, again, we talked about the microphone and the vocal chain. That's one of the most important things because you're here to produce artists, not yourself. Obviously, in certain genres like EDM, I guess producers are like, whoa, it's this guy. Jelly Mouse or whatever the fuck they are. I don't know. No disrespect. But for me, a microphone preamp, it's going C tier. It's going C tier. With the quality of audio interfaces that we have today, we have better preamps, better converters than we've ever had at budget ranges that are way lower than they've ever been. So I think this is a down-the-road purchase. We start with the mic, and then we go from there. We upgrade the chain as we go. C tier for me for a producer. Possibly B if you have budget. If you don't have any budget, put this on the table for later. Dead ass simple. If you got a fuck ton of money, go ahead. Buy a nice preamp. Will it change your world? No. When you get to a certain stage of your career where your ears are dialed in and you've been working with the same room, with the same microphone, with the same vocalist, and you've got a lot of reps, will you hear the differences in preamps? Absolutely. You definitely will. Which brings us along to audio interface. Let's see. Where does an audio interface go in this list? I'm going to go A. I'm going to go A. A because it's affordable. There, like I just said when I was talking about the preamp, more so than ever, we have access to audio interfaces that are higher quality than they've ever been for really cheap. And I think that having one that, actually, I'm going to B. And I'm going below monitors. I'm going to B. I think you can get away with a budget interface for a long time. It'll take a while. Having a good mic, yes, it will limit the the quality of that mic if you have a really shitty interface. But I think for me personally, and I picked an Apollo Twin because I think for bang for buck, it's one of the best things you can get. It's what my entire studio is now going to be running off of. I actually just sold my X16 and all my outboard gear for mixing, and I'm just running a Twin. I think, it's not going to make or break your career if you get a Twin or a Focusrite or whatever. There are some limitations. Having a Twin, an Apollo Twin specifically, does open up some doors in terms of using UAD console for input monitoring, tracking through good sounding plugins, et cetera, et cetera. But in the case of all interfaces, I'm going with a B of importance. Also, this conversation changes depending on the type of music you're producing. If you're a hip hop producer, you probably don't care about having a bunch of I/O. You're mostly doing dubs and vocals and stuff over beats. So you don't need to track a band. If you're a rock producer, if you're a metal producer, if you do live drums, then obviously this is going to go up in importance and you're going to need an interface that can support the I/O you need to track the types of music you're working on. We're going to keep it in B for the average pop-leaning style of production where we're focusing on artists. Plugins. Controversial. Very controversial. To say that they're not important is annoying. I know I see people talking about, you got to be able to make a record with stock plugins. Dude, let's be fucking real. A lot of those people who are like my age and older who say that, we all cracked waves when we were in our 20s and we played with all the cool plugins anyway. So for me, having a reliable suite of plugins that allows you to do the broad range of surgical and creative is important. I'm not counting virtual instruments here. I'm talking about plugins that are like EQs, compressors, reverbs, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to go C tier above a mic preamp. I don't think you need to have every plugin. I don't think you need to have all the things. I don't think it needs to be UAD and look like an exact replica. There are so many great plugins, but like having access to plugins that you know and trust and you like the sound of, it's very cool. But it's still not more important than monitors or having a good interface, depending on your, again, tracking needs. So for me, they're going in C. I'm sure that people could make the argument for them going in D, but for me, going to C. And that rhymes. Here we have, this is a TubeTech CL1B. It's going to represent a compressor, outboard compression, outboard EQ. We'll just say outboard gear in general. Stuff that is not a mic preamp, signal processing. How important is that for the young, aspiring, or middle-of-the-road producer who's earning income? Much like a mic preamp, this is going to go below a mic preamp because until you have a preamp that is going to capture the quality of your microphone, the hierarchy being microphone, preamp, signal processing, it doesn't really matter. Those are the stages that are important to me. Having a great quality mic, having a good preamp to go, and decent interface for converters for said preamp, and then additional processing after the fact. You can do so many things in the box. Computers are so good now that you can input monitor through plugins in your DAW while you're tracking. So like, is it that important? No, I'm not going to say that it's not important. I'm not going to say that it doesn't add something. This vocal is being tracked through a 1073 and a TubeTech clone by Warm Audio, and it sounds pretty good. And artists enjoy hearing their vocal in their ears sounding like a record, and things like that will get you a little closer to it. But is it priority? No, it's not priority. This one is LED, like swag in a room. This camera is facing me. You don't see the rest of my room, but I've got LED lighting up on my acoustic panels. I've got some other cool accent lights around the room. The room's clean. And It creates a little bit of a vibe. I've got some decor. So this whole thing is about the vibe of your room. How important is it? Is it important at all? If you're a person who works remotely, not important. If you're a person who tracks a lot of people, if you have a lot of rights at your studio, it's pretty important, man. You know, like it's a subtle thing, but it is important. And people catch the vibe and they feel good when they're in a space that you take seriously. It makes them think that you're serious about what you do. So actually, we're going to say that D is like the bonus category. It's a bonus category. It's not unimportant, but it's a nice perk. It's something to consider. This is probably one of the last things you'll do in terms of like upgrading your shit, but it's definitely something you don't want to skip in the long run. Keyboard. This is a MIDI controller. How important is a MIDI controller? This is so genre dependent. Do you need a really good one? Can you just get $100 one like this? I think it's Akai. It's the brand. That's what I had for my first one. Do you need it? If you're a keyboard player, well, probably, yeah, you do need one. If you program drums, do you need it? No. If you play a little like synth lines and melodies, you might need it. I'm going to go bottom of C. For people who make beats, this could be more important. In fact, it's going to go above preamp and outboard, because I do think that depending on the genre, if you work in pop, if you work in hip hop, anything sample heavy, anything program heavy, it'll improve your workflow. Even me, who tends to work with more guitar driven music, and I'm programming drums, I like to do it on a keyboard. I like to play the kit. So yeah, that's going to go there. Not a lot to say. They're super cheap, pretty easy to budget for. Something you don't want to skip. Now, a big one. Big one here. Room treatment. Room treatment. S tier. In fact, it's going above. It's going above microphone. You can have a budget-friendly microphone, budget-friendly monitors, and put them in a shit-sounding room, and it'll just destroy the overall value and the information that you're hearing and getting and capturing. A well-treated room is one of the most important things you can have as a mixer, as a producer. I'm sorry. It's not a sexy answer. It's not a cool answer, but it's what you should invest in first. I'm working in a tiny bedroom in my house. It's the second bedroom. I live in a tiny little spot. I've got my master, a living room, kitchen, and this second bedroom is my studio. It's a small room. It's like 14 by 12. Not big at all, but it's treated. I've got cloud. I've got panels. I've got a nice big futon in the back. That's a nice absorbing material. I've got blackout curtains. It's not a perfectly treated room, but it's well treated enough for me to understand that I'm getting reliable information out of my monitors. And when I'm tracking, I'm getting decent sound going in. It's not too live. It's not too dead. It's good. It's Goldilocks. This should be one of the first things you invest money into. Anyone who tells you otherwise is an idiot. It doesn't matter is a stupid answer for this one. This is a big part of it. Part of your sound is the room that you're making your sounds in. Basic stuff, man. Okay. Computer. It's 2025. It's S tier. It should be one of the biggest investments that you make. Can you get, again, is there diminishing returns? Probably. Are there diminishing returns? Probably. Has technology gotten more affordable as time has gone on? Absolutely. Do you still want a future-proof computer if you can afford it? Yes. Absolutely. My entire studio, I used to run a Mac Mini. It was great. I loved it. It was a 2019. It was tricked out to the max. It had an old Intel chip in it. It was pre-silicon. It lasted me until a year or two ago, and then I finally kind of hit a point where I was like maxing it all the way out. I bought a refurbished MacBook 15-inch M2 Pro with 32 gigs of RAM. I oftentimes forget what my buffer size is when I'm working. Sometimes I'll be working at instead of 1024, I'll be working at 64, and I'll just forget. And I'll have a full mixing session going, and I'm in shock at how good computers have gotten. Especially if you have the money, Apple Silicon is one of the best investments you can make. Most of the major plugins and virtual instruments now work perfectly fine with it. It's totally doable. It's a safe investment. I waited to get into it for everything to catch up, and I'm never going to look back. This computer is also part of the reason why I'm getting rid of my hardware. It is so good. It's so portable. You don't need a tower. You don't need a Mac Studio. Anyone who tells you otherwise is crazy. A MacBook Pro, maybe a PC equivalent, although I'm a big Mac proponent. The silicon chips are insane. This is one of the most important things. This is where this is important in every phase of production: tracking, editing, mixing, mastering if you do that. Also, having a laptop allows you to be mobile. You can go to writing camps. You can go work at other people's houses. You don't need to be in your space at all times. This is one of the biggest investments you can make. Second only to room treatment, in my opinion. And there's a case to be made that it's even more important than room treatment. But we're going to leave it an S. DAW, digital audio workstation. How important is this? Well, having one, you need it. But how important is it? How important is a digital audio workstation in terms of which one do you choose? B. Well, the decision itself in terms of like the differences between them, I'm going to go with C. Actually, it doesn't fucking matter. Just pick one and learn it. Learn it like the back of your hand. I'm a Pro Tools guy. I took an audio class in college that was taught with Pro Tools. I stayed in Pro Tools for the rest of the time. Feels like home. I tried switching to Logic at one point. It was really cool. I really liked everything that it could do. I just didn't feel as comfortable. I didn't feel as fast. Ideally, you would be able to have multiple, especially if you're a mixer, have access to multiple DAWs and be fluent in them enough to render stems and have people send you their sessions and collaborate that way. But we don't need to do that. That's not a requirement. The most important thing is that you pick one, stick with it, and learn it. Logic's amazing. Pro Tools is annoying, but great. Cubase, fantastic. Reaper, great. Studio One. I know a lot of guys that work in Studio One. It shocks me, but it's great. There were so many conspiracies back in the day of like which DAW sounds the best. And while there are certain differences in terms of like Logic, for example, its panning algorithm is maybe different than Pro Tools. There are some different sounds, maybe. It doesn't matter. All that matters is if you are fast, good, and know it like the back of your hand. Moving along. Sleeper pick here. Storage. This picture is a Glyph hard drive. I love Glyphs. I was indoctrinated early. Storage and backups and file management. Incredibly important. I'm going to go here, and I'm actually going to move monitors into A. I take back what I said earlier. Storage and file management and having a system of organization is incredibly important, especially if you're working on multiple projects at once. And if you plan on doing this long-term or professionally, having a system, the way that you name, label, organize, how you send your deliverables. Do you have a backup? Do you have multiple backups? Do you have a cloud backup? Do you have physical backups? All incredibly important. Something that was drilled into me again in that audio class I took in college. There was an assignment in particular where the professor would you'd hand him a CD or a flash drive of your song and he would break it. And he would say, do you have a backup? And if you didn't, you failed. That lesson stuck, and it's one that will save your ass in the professional world. If your computer dies, which has happened to me before, do you have everything? And I mean everything. Your samples, not just your sessions, your samples, your templates, all that stuff. If you don't have backups of that shit, you're screwed, man. So this is important. It's going to go in B right below audio interface. Could make a case for A. Yeah. Guitar. Your instruments. How important are your instruments? This, again, very genre dependent. If you're a hip hop guy, you probably play keys. You might play a little bit of guitar. You might be using a lot of samples. You can get by with a lot of that too. In pop, same thing. Maybe you're more of a key-driven producer, but even then, having interesting instruments that sound good, that are of quality, whether it's a guitar, an electric guitar, an acoustic guitar, a keyboard, and getting good sounds on the way in. Oh man, as a producer, it's got to be A tier. Again, genre dependent. It's a tough one, but for me, as a guitar player who plays guitar in all of his productions, having expensive sounding instruments and knowing how to play them well, it's important because yes, I could use splice loops. Yes, I could use MIDI for a lot of things, but the live feel, I think we all kind of out of that 2000s era of pop got sick of that super, super perfect thing. And weird sounding stuff is in, and you're more able to make that with a real instrument than you are just with a sample. So for me, going in A. Samples. Splice logo. Oh, got cut off. Oh well, you get what it is. It's the Splice logo. The modern producer. Should you get a Splice account? Should you use Arcade by Output? I'm sure there are more of these, Splice being the biggest one. Should you invest in this? It's super genre dependent, but even a guy who works on predominantly live instrumentation, me, yeah, it's actually going to go. Also, if you write a lot, this is important. For me and my purposes, it's going to go into B, mostly because I do a lot of writing. There are going to be situations when you're in a songwriting session where no one's got an idea. Nothing you're playing for them is sparking joy. Go to Splice, pull up a loop, start writing to the loop, build around that. It can save your ass. If you're in a rush and you're producing and you are out of ideas, if you're burnt out, go to Splice. Especially I know Pro Tools integrates with Splice directly, which is really nice. It'll take the tempo and key and it'll pitch and quantize everything to your current tempo. Super useful. I don't know if other DAWs have that feature. Actually, no, they already had it. The Splice Bridge, which was a VST only plugin, which Pro Tools didn't have. But now they got a really good version of it. So I would say if you're a writing producer, if you do a lot of songwriting, this is a B tier. If you're not doing a ton of writing, if you're just taking songs over the finish line, probably in C. For me, it's going to B. Headphones. Headphones. If you have a shit sounding room and monitors that you can't trust, then headphones are incredibly important. This is, not genre dependent. This is universal. Me personally, I tend to do most of my work in my room, but I do have Slate VSX, which are great sounding headphones and super useful when you're doing travel work. This one is so situational that I'm not sure where to put it, actually. Because for a producer who works out of their house all the time and you have monitors, they're not that important. If you can trust them, if you have a well-treated room, if you're a dude who's mobile all the time, if you write a lot, if you're moving around, super important, something reliable you can take with you. So for me, they're going to go into, for my purposes, they're going to go into bottom of C, because I just almost never use them. For somebody else, they might be an A. But that's where they're going for me. Which finally leaves us with marketing. Bro. We all do this for the love, but we also, at a certain point, if you're a person who watches my content or other content like it, you're probably either considering or have made the jump to doing this part-time or full-time. Marketing, much like for artists, for everybody, is more important than anything. You could have all of this stuff, the highest of quality, and nobody knows who you are. Not important at all. So it's going to go to the top. It's possibly in its own category. But if nobody knows you, if you're not getting word of mouth, if you're not meeting people through songwrites, if you're not taking steps to advertise yourself online, on social media, if you're at a place where there's not a lot of in-person interaction, if you work fully remote, if you're not running ads, if you're not making stupid shit posty dances on TikTok or whatever the fuck it is that people do, pardon my language, then none of that stuff even matters. So this is a lesson that I'm learning right now. That's why I do this YouTube stuff. Also because it's fun, and I think that I have a little bit of knowledge to impart, but I'm going to say that marketing is probably more important than all that. Yeah. And again, it can look different depending on where you are. If you live in a music town, you can go to the bars. If you drink, you can arrange co-writes. You can slide in some DMs. There's lots of ways to do it. A lot of ways to skin the proverbial cat, which is a weird expression. But it's probably more important than all of those other things, assuming that you're trying to turn your production into a business. If you just do it for fun, whatever, who cares? But if you're trying to be a pro, if you're trying to play the game, get into the industry, marketing, how you present yourself, etc., super important. That's my tier list, man. Upon final review, I don't know that I would really change much of anything. Not for a producer. Let me know what you think, valued viewer. Let me know in the comments. Did I get anything wrong? Did I forget anything? You tell me. If you liked this video, if you want to see more not anything like it because I'm just spitting out all the random ideas in my brain as they come to me, like, comment, and subscribe. But that's me. I'm done. Love yourself. Love your friends. Keep making good music. We'll see you on the next one.